Hey folks, it's Frithgar here, how you doing? Welcome back to Pacific Inlet here on Farming Simulator 17. We've started ploughing. Yes, we have actually started ploughing. Now I'll tell you this now because otherwise I'm going to end up talking about it anyway because it did annoy me a bit. I pressed the wrong button and so I recorded this episode. But I didn't realise I'd pressed the wrong button right near the beginning of recording this episode, which actually stopped my recording software from recording, but I didn't realise that I'd done it. It basically, there is a thing you do if you, like, you jump out of the game and you do something, you bring up another screen, it can crash the recording. And I know that it does this, and so all you've got to do is just stop the recording and then start it again if you go out of the game. And I forgot to do that, and I did it right at the beginning, but it crashes the recording, so it won't. It stops it, but it looks like it's still going. So I thought that it was still recording. It wasn't. So I've already recorded this episode, and I've had nothing actually happen. So I had an audio file but no video, and I thought, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to try and record just the video. So I've deleted all of that and we're starting again. So yes, slightly frustrated that I'm now having to do this twice. So I've already done this, and I'll tell you now, spoiler alert, we're doing some ploughing. Okay, we're going to get some ploughing done. We're not going to get all of it done. I know that I can't get all of it done. I don't have time to get it all done. But we get a good chunk done, I can tell you that. So yeah, spoiler alert, we are getting ploughing done. I apologise if you didn't want to hear that ahead of time. But yes, we're working on ploughing today. Also, I would like to talk about Farming Simulator 19. This is the hot topic at the moment. The hot topic, Farming Simulator 19. And it's something that has been bothering me a little bit. Okay? I don't actually know what the #1 produced crop in the world by volume is. It's either rice or wheat. One or the other, and I'm not sure which one it is. But whichever one is first, the other one is second, right? So you've got these two crops, the two most produced crops in the world. And Farming Simulator doesn't have rice. There's no rice in it at all. I was really hopeful that 19 would be bringing rice into the game. Now, we know that Pure Farming has got rice in it, and I do wonder if that influence their decision to go with the cotton rather than the rice, because you know there is going to be people who say, oh, you can't do that because Pure Farming have already done it. Well, no, sorry, that's not how it works. This is a farming simulator. They simulate farming, whether it doesn't really matter if somebody else has also done it. But yeah, I know that Pure Farming have already got rice in them, in their game. I don't know about in them, but they may eat rice as well. I eat rice. I eat lots of rice, so I frequently have rice in me. But anyway, that bit aside, we don't have rice. We still don't have rice in this game, and this is something that I don't like. I don't like this state of affairs, that we don't have rice farming. But then I got to thinking, well, we didn't have sugarcane previously, did we? Now, I know sugarcane is not really like a big crop, but if you think about it, we've got some big specialist crops, haven't we? We've got, we've now got sugarcane. We've got sugar beet. That's a specialist crop, specialist machinery. We've got, well, even sunflowers require a bit of specialist machinery, but although not really that much. Potatoes, they do require specialist machinery, and then the sugarcane that was added with all the specialist machinery and also a suitable location to farm the sugarcane in the Estancia La Pacho map. So that was all good. You know, I liked all that. So what's going to be the next big thing that is added into the game for FS19? So maybe, just maybe, they are planning on adding the other big crop in the world, because if wheat is the biggest, then rice is the second biggest, and I think it's actually the other way around. I think that wheat is the second. I think rice is the most grown crop in the world. I could be wrong on this, so don't quote me on it. Somebody can probably do a bit of Google foo and find out if I got that right or not. I think rice is the biggest produced crop. So my guess is that FS19, in a year's time, when they release the big expansion, which they invariably will, they did with they did with FS15 with the gold version, and they did with FS17 with the platinum version. So it kind of stands to reason that we should, in theory, for FS19, get another version, like an updated, a big version, like a gold version, a platinum version, whatever. I don't know if they did it with FS13. I don't remember. I've no idea. So if you could fill me in on that one, did they do it? Did they release an extra thing? And if so, what did they release with the the special expansion version in FS13? I don't know if they did a gold version or not. I think they did. I got a feeling they did, but I genuinely can't remember at the moment. But anyway, what did they release with it? Does anybody know? Does anybody remember all those years ago? So that's my theory at the moment, is that the reason we're not having rice introduced at the beginning of the game has got nothing to do with what Pure Farming may or may not have released. It's got everything to do with the fact that they're planning to add rice into the game, plus an additional map with rice paddies and everything, so it would have... Now, this could go one of several ways. We could have a map that's based somewhere in Asia. It could be India, which is a very big rice-producing country. It could be China, southern half of China. It could be one based in Japan, although the Japanese farms tend towards medium to smaller scale stuff rather than big scale stuff. I'm sure there is bigger scale stuff in Japan, but it's just not as much of it. They do tend to more towards the medium scale. Southern states of the US, there's quite a lot of rice produced there, and Australia, there's a lot of rice produced there. So it could be any of those locations. It could be any of them. I'd be genuinely gobsmacked if they based... And if they introduce rice into the game, I would be gobsmacked if they put the map that they're putting it on as the US-based one. My guess is it'd either be Australia or southern China. That would be my guess. I mean, I could have this completely wrong. It may be neither of those. They may go for the US. They may go for somewhere else entirely. They may try and put rice in... do they do rice in South Africa? You could, like, bring in a South African map and do rice there. So... It could literally be anywhere, to be honest. There's no sort of hard and fast anything on it, I don't think. But my guess is that it would be either Australia or somewhere in Asia that they haven't yet done a map on. We had South America, and that was the first time they visited South America. So I would guess it'd kind of keep with the world theme going, and they would try to put it somewhere that they've never looked at before. So we could, for the expansion for FS19, get rice being based in another country somewhere. That's my theory. That is my current theory on this subject. What do you think? And also, what is your opinion of this? Would you like to see rice being brought to the game as a major expansion, as like the major expansion of FS19 in a year's time? Is this something you'd love to see? Or is it something that you don't think needs to be added to the game? I know some people really love the sugarcane thing and the whole South American map. Other people didn't like it at all. Other people thought it was a waste of time. So obviously, there's going to be a very divided opinion no matter what is released. It doesn't matter what they release for anything. There will always be a divided opinion. There's always going to be people that don't like it, and there's always going to be people that love it. Generally, I'm quite impressed with most things that they put out because it's new, it's shiny, and I'm usually impressed with new and shiny. But the rice in particular, I would love to see rice done and a whole range of machinery added for rice farming as well, like they did with the sugarcane. They added a huge range of machinery for sugarcane. They had the trailers, they had the harvesters, the planters, and all of the other extra little bits that went with it as well. It was absolutely fantastic, and I really thought it was awesome. So I would personally like to see something like that. And, great big DLC. You got rice planters, the transplanters, and then you've also got the ability to plant rice direct, because as far as I know, rice is planted in a lot of Asian countries. They grow the rice first into seedlings in nurseries, and they grow them in little trays, and so you end up getting a mat of seedlings that is a set size. They're a set width, set height, and you've got these seedlings. The seedlings are then transplanted out into the rice paddies. And they're done like this so that, well, not in all the parts of the world, but in some parts of the world it allows them to grow rice where they wouldn't be able to grow them from seed because the seed would take too long to grow. And so they do it like that. And also, growing them in nurseries helps them get established a little bit better, I think, as well. I think that's also to do with it. But anyway, some parts of the world they use transplanting. They grow seedlings and they use transplanting. In other parts of the world, they direct plant the seed straight into the ground and it just grows from there. I believe most places in the US that grow rice, and also in Australia, they do it like that rather than transplanting seedlings. Transplanting seedlings is done a lot in Japan, certainly. They've got rice transplanters that go along and they basically, it's these little mechanical fingers that grab hold of the rice and then replant it, and it's really cool the way that they work. I love watching those things. That they do look absolutely fantastic. I've seen many a video with those things working. Right, now what I'm going to do next on here is we're going to drive over this way a little bit, and we are going to start using the GPS mod to start working our way up and down the field. Just to start with, I'm going to go on this side over here. I'm an old hand at this. I've done this before. A little secret for you there. Now, I'm deliberately putting myself at a slight angle to what the map is. So, for those of you who never used GPS before, you always press the left control button before you do anything else. And then I press 0 on the keypad, and that's brought it up like that. So now we can see, if you have a look at it here, you can see the lines, but they're not in line with the tractor. They're actually in line with the base game with the map. And you can alter them round if you want to. You can do it like that. I don't want to. I do want to auto-set the width. Now, because I'm at an angle, it's also auto-set the width slightly wrong. I know that this one's exactly 3 meters wide. I'm going to run the working width slightly lower than that, and I'm going to run it at 2.8 meters. So there's a slight overlap. But that also means that sometimes the game and the GPS mod, if you run it at the exact width of the machine, you can occasionally get a little bit of a gap between them. And I found the best way is to simply just keep it narrow. The lines that you can see on the ground, I'm going to leave these going today. You can set them up like that if you want to, if you're working in a well-established crop, so you can still see the lines, or you can switch them off completely. I'm keeping mine going. We're not going to worry about the offset bit here, that's for ploughing. We don't need to run about that. Auto turn, where it turns itself automatically at the end of the row. We're not going to worry about that either. We're just going to do this. Now, you can do it that on there. That activates it, so it's now driving according to the straight lines, or you can turn it off again and it's deactivated. You can also activate that by pressing the left control and the W key. Okay, and that works. Now I'm going, you press the left control and the 0 on the number pad in order to bring the whole thing up, and we press the left control and the full stop on the number pad to hide the interface whilst keeping it still working. That's what we've done now. So now I'm just going to drive along, and it's following the straight lines. When you get to the end, if you just steer away from it, it will automatically disengage the GPS, so you don't have to press the left control W in order to disengage it. You've only got to press left control W in order to engage it, like I've done just there. So we're going to work our way up and down a little bit on this side, just to get these stumps here. Well, just this little patch that we've got here. I might actually need to just lower that down a little bit, I think. You've also got to get the stump grinder to line up to the middle, so you do frequently have to disengage it, and then we'll get it back into the lines again and just finish that off. I'm going to just go up and down on this little bit here, right side by side, until I've filled out this little patch. And then I'm going to start doing it in a bigger loop, because it's just easier to do the turning if you work in a bigger loop rather than trying to turn on yourself all the time. So we'll come back up through here. So yes, I would love to hear all things rice related. What are your thoughts on the subject? Would you love to see rice being added to the game? Where would you like to see a rice, obviously the the big thing with the Estancia La Pacho map was that they produced sugarcane there, and sugarcane was a big part of it. So they kind of based the map on the crop. So where would you like to see the FS17, assuming that they do, FS19 rather, big expansion? Where would you like to see it take place? What country would you like to see the new map? And what crop would you like it to be? Are you the same as me? Would you love to see rice added into this game and be able to go in for some rice production? If it's being added into the game, I personally would absolutely love to see it based in Asia somewhere. So we have proper rice paddies going. Now, I know that some places in the States do actually use the flooding. They do flood their fields and everything. But I would still like to see it based in somewhere in Asia, and mainly because I like the Asian architecture and stuff in the background. I think that would look really cool. It'd be a nice variation because we've got several US maps already, so I feel it would be a really nice change of pace. And it's just something that I like. It's the personal preference, and also, you know, then we've got a bit more variation for where we can go in the world. We're not just stuck with a few countries. We've got a lot more variety that we can choose from. So what would you like to see? Where would you like the map to be based? How would you like it to be done? Would you like rice paddies to be added to the game at all, or do you think that's a terrible idea, shouldn't be done, and we should have a different crop altogether? If so, now what would you like to see? You know, we know that they added a big expansion to FS15. They added a big expansion to FS17. So it stands to reason that they will for FS19. What would you like to see added in as the big expansion for FS19? How would you like to see the game significantly altered? It could be argued, I suppose, that adding in sugarcane wasn't a very significant alteration to the game, because all it was adding in another crop and a few machines to it. But I still felt that it was quite significant. There was a lot of stuff that was added in with those machines. Those machines themselves, there was a huge chunk of them, plus the extra crop as well, a new way of doing things, a new way of method of farming. I thought that that was quite a significant update, and personally I also really enjoyed it. So how would you like to see it done? What would you like to see added in? I personally, also, I cannot see them putting in, because I know that some people will probably say that they want deformable terrain added in. That's what they'd like to see for the big update. I can't see that being added in as part of an update. I can only see that being added in as part of the base game. So my guess is that the deformable terrain that so many people want, Giants are working on it right now, and I would say that is going to be part of FS21. It's going to be the big selling point for Farming Simulator 21 is the deformable terrain. How deformable it becomes, I don't know. It's anybody's guess. But that is my guess at the moment, is that that's what we're going to see. I say that. That was my prediction for FS19 when FS17 came out, was that we would have this big deformable terrain. So I could be just as wrong in the next one. You never can really tell. But that's my guess at the moment, is that's what we're going to get in FS21, is going to be the deformable terrain. And I don't think we're going to see it before then. I'd be absolutely gobsmacked if they added it in as part of a DLC expansion to the game in the form of like the Platinum Edition of FS19. I would genuinely be gobsmacked if that happened. Yeah, it would be really cool, don't get me wrong. I think it would be absolutely fantastic. But personally, I think that rice is going to be the thing that's going to be added. That's my theory. So theories today, looking not to the launch of FS17, I want to hear some theories about what you think is going to happen a little bit further down the line. What are they going to add in later on to the game? What are they withholding from us at the moment so that they can drip feed it in a little bit later on? We know also that Kubota is not going to be in here. Now, we thought that Kubota was going to be added into the game. There was pictures of Farming Simulator with Kubota machinery behind it at the a big games week in Poland. But it turns out, as confirmed by a official post from Lars, who's the community manager for Farming Simulator and for giants, and he posts occasionally on the forums and stuff. But he's like, he's the final word. If he says so, then yeah, that we know that is that's come from the top. And Lars said in his post that it was a mistake, the Kubota machinery being put on display with it. It's made some confusion. So in order to clarify and clear it up, Kubota machinery is not coming to FS19 at all. And he did state at all, which makes me think that maybe they, you know, he's written off any chance of Kubota being added in as part of a DLC later on. So maybe they've approached Kubota and Kubota have said, no, we don't want to be involved in this. I'm not really sure. I did hear that Kubota was bought out by someone else, that they're now owned by a different company, but I don't know who it is, and I don't really know the ins and outs of it, because I don't know that much about Kubota machinery. I know some. I know that I've used some of their tractors, and they're quite good. I know I've also used Kubota mini digger, quite an old one, but I have used one. And so I know that they're good machines, but I don't know very much about the Kubota company. And so I'm not really sure what the situation might be with them, and whether or not they have been bought out or anything like that. Just have to sort of, I'll have to wait and see on that. So anybody does know a little bit more about it, feel free to correct my ignorance in the comment section down below. I always appreciate that. And I'm being serious. I hate being ignorant on any subject. See, stupidity is something you can't cure. Okay, stupidity is unfortunately a lack of processing power. Ignorance, though, ignorance can be cured. Ignorance is easy to cure. You just need more information. And I love when you guys get together or take it upon yourselves to correct my ignorance on all manner of subjects, and I get it time after time after time. I think I've got something, and then I get somebody who says, hang on a minute, no, it's like this. I love it when you do that, because that's basically filling in gaps in my knowledge, and I hate having gaps in my knowledge. So, fill in my ignorance on this one, hammer my ignorance on this one, absolutely get rid of it, crush the ignorance, and tell me what I'm missing on the whole Kubota thing, because I am certain and positive that some of you know more about it than I do, and if not, some of you will no doubt resort to your Google foo and you fill me in that way, because there's always Google foo. We can always use Google foo, and some people have very strong Google foo, and you're very good at filling me in on all kinds of little details, which is also really appreciated. And I really do like that you fill me in on all the bits that I get wrong, because that means that next time round I'm not going to get it wrong. I'm going to be able to give you the accurate information, which is what most of you want in the first place. Right, we'll bring this one back. I think we're doing all right so far. We're doing well. I think I'm sort of making roughly the same progress that I did about an hour ago when I was last recording this. That's one of the big frustrating things of being a YouTuber. Occasionally you get something that goes horribly wrong, and you've then got to redo it. And I get this occasionally on the time-lapse. I have to redo a section on the time-lapse. I always put breaks in when I'm recording time-lapse. I never do the whole stint at once. The most I will do is an hour and a half. That's quite rare. I try to put a break in at least once an hour, sometimes a bit more than that. I did actually state in one of the more recent time-lapses that I was not doing... I changed the way that I was actually doing it, because I had a storm outside and the lights were flickering a bit, so I needed to be changing machines more frequently so I could do smooth transitions between where I was stopping recording and starting again. And the only way to really do that is to go into cab and out of cab again, or to change machines. And in order to be able to do either of those things, to do it properly, if I was just like switching view in cab, it looks weird when you're playing back the time lapse. So usually I stop when I'm changing machine. When I'm changing over the machine that I'm driving, that's the point that I will stop it, because as you jump into the machine, it's always the camera angle is at exact right point. So if for any reason I have to exit the game and come back in again, then the camera angle is still at the exact right point, whereas it doesn't do that for other times. And I don't like, there's a mod that does actually save your camera angle permanently. I don't like that one because it looks a little strange sometimes when you're jumping in and out. I prefer it to go dead behind the vehicle. It just keeps things nice and simple and avoids any confusions. So that's why I do it like that. And I have had times before where the game has crashed, or I've had a power cut, or the recording software hasn't worked properly, and it's, you know, I've then had to re-record an hour section or a 45-minute section in a time lapse. That gets a little bit frustrating. What gets more frustrating for me personally is when I've got to record one of these where I'm talking, because I've then got to pretty much say the same thing over again. I mean, I'm not saying exactly the same thing again. I was waffling on about the merits of Asian architecture in fantasy games the last time I recorded this, and now that I've reminded myself of it, I'll probably start talking about that again in a minute, because I happen to really like that. And I know some people do and some people don't. But this isn't a fantasy game. I'd like, actually, now that I mention it. But anyway, it is frustrating. Having to go through and redo a video can be frustrating, but I think we're making good progress. That was what I meant to say on here. That's kind of what I originally meant to say, was that we're making good progress, and we've sort of achieved about the same as what I'd achieved by this point in the last video. So so far I'm pleased. But yeah, Asian architecture. Do any of you like to see it in games? I don't know, actually, how many people I have watching me from various Asian countries. I know I have some, but I don't know how many. And some games, like World of Warcraft, they produce whole expansions based on Asian theme and terminology. But when we say Asian, we almost invariably mean a mixture of Chinese and Japanese. That is almost always what they mean and what they produce. The same as when we say European, what we actually end up with is a kind of hodgepodge mixture of everything from the Mediterranean all the way up to northern Scandinavia. And then when we say tribal, we have this mixture of everything from the US before it was discovered by white people in the 1400s, so the US 1,000 years ago, and Africa. And so generally you've got these three themes. You've got tribal, you've got European, and you've got Asian, and it kind of like blends the entire world down into a very, very oversimplified mixture. And so there's always people that get upset that they've oversimplified it. There's always people that don't like one particular region over another, and then there's always people who really like it. Me personally, I like Asian themes in fantasy games. I've always really enjoyed it, and I'm aware that it is just a kind of just a mashing together of quite a number of various different Asian themes from around the world, from all the different Asian areas. And yeah, it would be nice to have them separated, but there are very few games that actually have them separated. Guild Wars 2 is one that separated them out a little bit more. Guild Wars 2 also is one of the few games I know, one of the few fantasy games, that when they introduced a kind of tribal aspect to the game with one of their expansions, they didn't actually try to blend everything that's ever been considered tribal in the world and like mash it all together in some sort of, you know, big insulting hodgepodge. They actually focused on an African theme, and it worked really well, and I did quite enjoy that expansion. I just preferred the Asian one, the cafe one. I can't remember what the African one was called, but it had a very strong African feel to it. And by African, I realise, again, we're talking about an entire continent. There are vast differences between Northern Africa and Southern Africa. There are vast differences between the various different countries in Africa, and we're talking about a continent that is bigger than Europe and the US combined. So yes, it is a vast generalization, and There's a lot of people that don't like these generalizations. So I'm interested in your opinions also today. Anybody that does play, I realise a lot of you don't play fantasy games, but any of you that do, what are your favourite themes? Do you like these? Do you like the various different themes in them? I really did like in World of Warcraft. I like the Pandaria expansion, with the Asian themes in them. Although personally, I don't like playing the Pandarian character. I didn't particularly enjoy the panda. So I generally play as human when I'm playing World of Warcraft, and I quite enjoy playing as human. But I did really enjoy the actual expansion for Pandaria and the sort of the feel of it as you went through all of it. The vast feel of the whole world I thought was really well done, and it was absolutely brilliant. I really did love it, and it was, like I said, it was the same with Guild Wars back when I played that. That was one of the first MMOs I ever played, was Guild Wars, and that also had a big. It was I'm sure it was called Cathay, the kind of the Asian feel one, and that was awesome. I loved that expansion. It was absolutely brilliant because they took quite a lot of creatures from various different Asian mythology, and they threw them in there as well. There was quite a few different ones, which was absolutely fantastic. It was a lot of fun to play through those and find all these different creatures. Yes, they'd done their own unique take on it, like Guild Wars did, but some of the creatures in there I'd never seen elsewhere, and I sort of went and researched them a bit, and some of them were quite strong in Asian mythology that you wouldn't normally see elsewhere, and I'd not really encountered in games before, so I was quite pleased to be able to find that. I thought that was absolutely great. But yeah, your opinions please on that one. Most of all, we're talking about FS19 in the comments section, and whether or not you think there's going to be rice added in. But as we're on kind of an Asian theme today, what is your opinions of Asian themes in games? Well, any games really, but in particular fantasy games, because I have a soft spot. Most of you know that I do play a lot of fantasy games, so I particularly like the Asian theme turning up in the fantasy games that I play. I think it fits really well with most of them, and it's a lot of fun as well. And there are a lot of fantasy games. I need to lower that down a little bit, I think, where it's sort of it's kind of lifting me off the ground in places, but then in other places I'm starting to miss the odd little bit. See, there I'm being lifted off the ground instantly. I'm already being lifted off the ground with this thing, so it does need a little bit of adjustment as you go along, but for the most part it seems pretty good. Fantasy games. What do you like to see with the whole Asian thing, with Asian themes and terminologies and stuff? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you feel it's overdone? Do you feel that it should be a little bit more historically accurate? And if that's the case, do you also feel that representation of all countries in the world should be more accurate? I mean, my own personal sort of rebuff to that particular argument is that we're talking about fantasy worlds, so a generalized theme I think does actually fit in a fantasy world. If you're looking at a historically accurate one, then obviously a generalized theme where they mash 20 different countries together as one theme, yeah, that doesn't really work so well. That's not so much. But I've never really been one for playing historical games, especially. I know World War II games are particularly popular amongst a lot of people. I've never really enjoyed them. That's not an era that I particularly enjoy playing. For various reasons, I don't particularly like it. I don't like going back through and reliving some of the worst horrors that people I know actually lived through, and it makes it a bit more personal, which is why I don't particularly like games from those eras, because almost invariably games from like World War II era are fighting games, and yeah, it's not really a thing I like to do. Then I'm not that much of a fan of fighting games anyway. I tend to go more for either simulator type things or fantasy type things. But most of you know that anyway. You know, survival games. I love survival games, and you've seen those on the channel. And then fantasy games as well. And if I can do simulators, survivals, and fantasies, that's pretty much got me covered. With the occasional, like, you're sort of bordering between God modes and simulator with things like SimCity and, well, I'm not actually playing SimCity, I'm playing City Skylines, but yeah, those types of games as well, where you're sort of top-down controlling everything on that kind of scale. Those are also ones that I like. Banished, I did Banished quite a bit. That was medieval, that one was. And again, that's another type of game that I really like. So I would also like to hear from you today on, you know, what sort of themes you like in games, and if you play fantasy games, do you like to see? There we go. Do you like to see that sort of thing? Do you like to see particular themes in fantasy games taken from or heavily influenced by real-world areas, or do you prefer fantasy games that just create all of their own stuff without any influence at all? Although I think that there are some, but I feel that they are very few and far between, because like almost all of the fantasy that I know, especially your classic fantasy that I grew up with, like Dungeons... Well, I never actually played Dungeons & Dragons. I was never allowed to play it, but you know the sort of stuff that I mean. Dungeons & Dragons, Warhammer, that kind of thing. That was all heavily influenced by medieval European style. You just about all of it, the architecture and the feel of the game, the feel of the areas, and the seasons and everything is all very heavily influenced by Europe, isn't it? And usually Central Europe. It is usually Central Europe and the southern parts of the UK. That seems to be the main influences with architecture and the feel of places, although it does tend to venture further north and further south, and also over towards Russia as well. Those are kind of not like the hard and fast parts of it. Does that make any sense to you? So I don't know, influences in all of these fantasy games. So you've got these heavy influences, and they're all there, and you can easily identify them. And then you kind of look at it and you sort of think, well, I can see where that was identified, that was sort of influenced by. But how many games are there where you go to the game and they've tried to steer clear of all of the influences? It's really difficult. You try and sort of come up with a game that hasn't been heavily influenced by some kind of real-world architecture somewhere. It's nigh on impossible. It really is. We seem to have covered just about every type of architecture there is. And you go to a new game, very occasionally you might find something that you think, well, this has just been plucked completely out of someone's random nightmare, and it looks really cool, and it doesn't instantly remind you of any part of the world ever. But I feel that is a very, very rare thing. So yes, I know that there's a lot of people that can get upset by, oh, this wasn't represented properly and this was over-represented, whereas this bit here wasn't represented at all. And yes, you know, I'm sure it can be upsetting for some people, but when you sort of stop to consider the sheer astronomical challenge of creating a brand new game with an architecture and a feel that has never been experienced in the real world, that's insanely difficult. That is something that, you know, it doesn't really matter what you look at and how you get to a point. There's always some sort of influence somewhere, and it is always somewhere that it's been done before, and so it makes it a lot more difficult. And that sort of brings me back to adding rice into Farming Simulator 17. Now, I have got no doubt that if they were to add rice, there would be a vocal minority that would scream, oh, we're just doing this to try to increase sales in an Asian market. but we shouldn't have had it in the game. And there will be another vocal minority that will say that it's not properly represented or something else. Me personally, I'm usually just happy to see it in there. I'm just happy to see it represented in the first place. And yes, I'm sure there's no doubt going to be some terrible controversy if it was to be put in. But I just like to see it there. I just like to be able to grow some rice in a field. That's all. I'm not asking for controversy. I'm not asking for anything, I'm not asking for anything controversial. I'm not asking for one culture to wipe out another culture or be overrepresented or underrepresented or anything else. All I really want from the big expansion for FS19 is to be able to go and plant rice in a field. That's all I'm asking. I steer clear of the controversy. I'm not interested, and I'm sure that many of you will be equally uninterested, but you'd quite like to get hold of one of those really cool rice planting machines and have a go at it yourself, because they are really cool. There's nothing wrong with those. They're nothing wrong. They're absolutely fantastic. It's like a little robot that goes across the field, picks up the plant, and then plants it for you. It's absolutely awesome. I want one of those in Farming Simulator 19. That's what I want. That's all I want. Controversy aside, that's all I'm asking for, is the ability to plant rice with these really cool-looking robot-type machines. And I feel that is not too much to ask, and I feel that we can do this. And I really do. So I think that what we need to do is we need to petition Giants to add this into the game. And I've just about run out of time for today's episode. We've got just well, I don't think we're going to quite finish this little bit, but we've done about the same as what I did last time I recorded this and then didn't, so I'm hoping that I don't have to do this a third time. I have once before now had to record the same episode 4 times. Twice because of a power cut, and then once because it didn't record properly. The first time it didn't record properly, then I had a power cut when I was 3/4 of the way recording it, and then I got, I started doing it again, and I had another power cut. And, I can tell you, that was heartbreaking. That was genuinely, genuinely heartbreaking, and I had to record it the 4th time. And I couldn't just say, you know what, I'm putting this aside, I'm taking a break from this one today, I'll come back tomorrow and I'll have another go at it, because the video was due out the following day, and I had to do it, and I did it 4 times. I had to do the same video 4 times. I've never had to do that again, touch wood. But, hopefully I won't have to. I probably will. At some point, I will probably end up having to do that again. But all I know is you don't really want to have to do this twice. But there we go. Those are my rambling thoughts for the day while we're doing our slow ploughing and removing of stumps up across our fields. Is Asian themes and technology and architecture and stuff being added into games. What do you think of it all? Do you like it? Do you not like it? Do you feel that it's insulting? Do you feel that it's actually really cool? Are you kind of with me that you don't really read very much into all of these things and just think, oh, cool, I can plant rice? Because I know there's a lot of people out there that do actually think like that. We get this kind of vocal screaming from Twitter, which is then picked up by newspapers and other media outlets, and who repeat it because, the people are offended, when in actual fact it's usually the same half dozen people that are screaming because they've got nothing else to do. And yeah, I sort of look at it and I think, well, okay, yeah, but I don't feel all outraged like that, but I do like this bit. I can plant rice in a field. That's what I'd be looking at. Or I think the architecture looks really cool. Can't I just enjoy the architecture and the fact that we've now got these big curly dragons in the game instead of just the European themed dragons in the fantasy games that I like to play. That's kind of the way I look at it. Is, well, actually I really like this because now I've got these dragons instead of just these dragons, and I can look at pagodas for a little while instead of just having to look at square buildings. And well, I realise that pagodas are square, but you know what I mean. It's a different thing to look at. Instead of looking at a tall straight tower, I've now got a pagoda to look at, which is really nice and it's different and it looks really awesome. And so I've got some variation, and I'm just happy that I've got the curly, the long snake-like dragon, which looks really cool, by the way. I've got a few of those now. I'm talking about World of Warcraft there, just in case anybody didn't realise. But yeah, that's kind of how I tend to view these things. So if rice is added into the game, I, for one, am going to be very, very pleased. And I think it's going to be awesome. And that is my theory. That is my theory today, is that I feel that Farming Simulator 19 will add rice to the game. I don't know how they're going to do it. I don't know where the map is going to be based, but I do genuinely think that that is what they'll add in. But anyway, as we have run out of time, if you've enjoyed this episode, then please head down below and give us a like. And if you really enjoyed it, then please tell your friends all about me. Get them to come and watch as well. That would be awesome. And until next time, thank you very much for watching. This is Frithgar. Goodbye, and see you later.